The early morning mist hung thick over Silver Creek Ranch in South Texas, casting a ghostly veil over the rolling pastures and wooden fencing that had weathered decades of wind and sun. Ranger Mateo Alvarez, 42, was making his usual rounds, checking the barbed wire boundaries that kept cattle from wandering onto the dusty ranch roads. The radio crackled urgently, breaking the serenity of the morning. Possible livestock in distress, near County Road 215. Reports of something unusual, the dispatcher warned. Mateo's pulse quickened. He had been patrolling these ranches for over 15 years, and while he had seen his fair share of animal emergencies, the tone of that call sent a chill down his spine. 20 minutes later, his truck kicked up gravel as he approached the reported location, and the sight that met him froze him to the seat. Not 50 yards from the road, a magnificent bull lay entangled in something utterly unnatural. A massive Burmese python, nearly 20 feet long, had coiled itself with the precision and power of a living vice around the bull's torso. The bull, an enormous Brahmin named Atlas, thrashed with all the strength of his 1,800-pound frame, but the serpent's grip was methodical, relentless, and terrifyingly efficient. Mateo grabbed his binoculars, hands trembling slightly as he scanned the scene, and radioed in for immediate backup. "We got code red. Large python attacking livestock. I repeat, code red." His voice, calm but tense, betrayed the gravity of what was unfolding before him. Atlas's dark eyes were wide with panic, muscles rippling under the pressure, and each exhale he tried to draw seemed to tighten the snake's vice-like hold. Mateo's stomach knotted. He knew the nearest wildlife unit was at least 15 minutes away, and every second felt like an eternity. The python's scales glistened in the pale morning sun, its body thick and yellow-brown, like a living armored rope. Mateo could hardly believe it. Burmese pythons were invasive in the southern United States, but sightings this far west were virtually unheard of, let alone a predator of such size attacking a full-grown bull. As he watched, he noted the bull's initial panic thrashing begin to change. Atlas's movements, though still strained, took on a deliberate rhythm. Each step planted his hooves with purpose, moving him steadily toward a large oak tree that bordered the pasture. "What are you doing, big guy?" Mateo whispered, adjusting his binoculars. The python, sensing this subtle shift in the bull's behavior, coiled tighter, expecting its victim to falter. Yet despite staggering exhaustion, Atlas pushed forward, navigating the uneven terrain with a determination that defied reason. The oak tree loomed closer, its gnarled bark worn from decades of wind and wildlife, and the bull, guided by some innate intelligence, pressed the python's head against the tree's rough trunk. Slowly, deliberately, Atlas began to rub the massive snake against the bark, leveraging the friction to weaken the constriction. Mateo's mouth fell open. He had never seen anything like this in all his years on the plains. The bull was problem-solving, using the tree as a tool against a predator that could have ended his life in moments. For 10 agonizing minutes, Atlas continued the methodical struggle, coiling and pushing until the python loosened enough for him to break free. The serpent, battered and disoriented, slithered off into the tall grass, leaving Atlas standing, sides heaving, but alive. Mateo lowered his binoculars, awe coursing through him. He had witnessed intelligence, courage, and strategy in an animal he had previously considered merely instinct-driven. But what shocked him even more was what happened next. Atlas did not flee, as any prey would have. Instead, the bull remained near the oak, watching the retreating python with a gaze that was calm, measured, almost contemplative. His dark eyes held no aggression, no lingering panic, only awareness, as if understanding that the snake had been acting out of survival, not malice. Mateo radioed the arriving backup team, his voice a mixture of disbelief and urgency. "You're not going to believe this," he murmured. "The bull, he's not running. He's watching it, like he knows it's not a threat anymore." When the first of the reserve rangers arrived, they froze in place, eyes wide at the unprecedented scene. The massive bull and the serpent, once predator and prey locked in a lethal dance, now occupied the same space in a quiet, almost mutual understanding. Dr. Adrian Summers, the wildlife veterinarian who had accompanied the team, lifted his binoculars. "I've been in wildlife medicine for 25 years, he whispered, voice low with reverence. "I've seen fear, aggression, and dominance, but I have never seen something like this. That bull isn't just surviving. He's protecting it." The morning sun began to pierce the dissipating fog, illuminating Atlas's muscled frame as he positioned himself near the tree, as if claiming the ground not in defense of himself, but in consideration of the python. Mateo shook his head, still gripping the binoculars. His heart pounded in disbelief. Here, in the middle of the Texas plains, a bond had formed in the span of a life-and-death struggle, a bond that seemed to transcend instinct. The ranger team looked at one another silently, realizing that what they were witnessing would challenge everything they thought they knew about intelligence, empathy, and interspecies interaction. The python, still curled but no longer constricting, seemed to sense the change as well, lifting its head slightly, observing the bull without aggression, without flight. Mateo exhaled slowly. It was in that tense, suspended moment, the predator and the would-be prey locked in mutual recognition, that the story of Atlas and Viper truly began, and no one present could have predicted the extraordinary events that would follow. Over the next several hours, the scene at Silver Creek Ranch became a careful balance of observation and cautious intervention. Backup rangers arrived with nets, hooks, and tranquilizer equipment, fully prepared for a confrontation, but they quickly realized that Atlas was no ordinary bull. The massive Brahmin, still recovering from the python's initial attack, moved deliberately, positioning himself between Viper, the now injured python, and the human responders. Every step was calculated, muscles taut yet controlled, as if he were negotiating the boundaries between species and safety. Dr. Adrian Summers knelt on the dusty ground, clipboard and medical kit in hand, marveling at the bull's behavior. "Carlos," he said quietly into his radio, "he's not aggressive. He's watching, he's protecting. We can't approach without his consent." Carlos Mendoza, still gripping his binoculars, nodded, astonished. He had witnessed countless large animal rescues over his years in South Texas, but nothing had prepared him for this level of awareness and strategic thinking. Viper, though still vulnerable, seemed to understand the bull's intentions. The massive serpent coiled closer to the oak tree, its body trembling slightly but maintaining a defensive posture only enough to protect itself. The dynamic between predator and prey had shifted, a silent understanding had taken hold, one that defied conventional notions of instinct. Rangers spoke in hushed tones, careful not to alarm either animal, while Dr. Summers began assessing Viper's injuries. Several abrasions ran along the python's head and midsection, inflicted during Atlas's tactical rubs against the tree. Bandages and supportive care would be necessary, but the veterinarian marveled at the bull's patience. Atlas remained near the python, occasionally nudging it with his massive muzzle, as if encouraging the snake to remain calm while the humans worked. Carlos muttered under his breath, still observing from the truck bed, "I've never seen anything like this. The bull is acting like he understands the python's pain, like he's offering help instead of fighting." As the sun climbed higher in the Texas sky, the scene became more surreal. The usually tense and chaotic ranch environment had transformed into an orchestrated tableau of interspecies trust. Viper's breathing became slower, more measured, seemingly in response to Atlas's presence. Dr. Summers carefully cleaned minor wounds along the python scales, while the bull maintained a protective stance nearby, lowering his head whenever the humans drew close. It was as if he were giving the team permission to help, but on his terms. A light breeze carried the scent of wild grass and dust across the open plain, and the only sound were the gentle rustle of leaves and the low rumble of Atlas's breathing. Carlos, still in awe, began documenting the moment with his handheld camera, narrating quietly. "Look at him, protecting the snake, not attacking it, not fleeing. It's like he knows what this creature needs and is responding accordingly." Dr. Summers scribbled notes furiously, realizing that they were witnessing a level of cognitive and emotional complexity in a large animal that had rarely, if ever, been documented. He spoke softly to the team. "We need to record everything. Every nudge, every adjustment, every subtle movement. This isn't just a rescue. This is a case study in intelligence, empathy, and cross-species communication." As the afternoon wore on, rangers began to relax slightly, encouraged by Atlas's calm demeanor. The bull's protective behavior remained consistent, a silent barrier that ensured the injured python could not be disturbed unnecessarily. Even when a sudden shadow from a low-flying hawk passed over the pasture, Atlas shifted position slightly, guiding Viper behind the safety of the oak tree, demonstrating foresight and spatial awareness beyond instinctual reaction. Dr. Summers couldn't contain his excitement. "Carlos, do you realize what we're seeing here? This bull isn't just surviving an attack. He's responding with thought, with strategy, with compassion. This is unprecedented." Carlos nodded, eyes still wide with disbelief. "I thought bulls were simple creatures of instinct, Doc. But Atlas, he's showing us a whole other level of understanding." The sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the Texas plains in gold and crimson. Despite the long day, neither Atlas nor Viper had left their positions. The bull maintained his vigil as Dr. Summers administered the final bandages and cleaned the last of the minor abrasions. For the first time, everyone present felt the weight of what had unfolded. This was not merely a rescue from physical harm. It was a revelation that challenged long-held assumptions about animal intelligence, emotional capacity, and the bonds that could exist between predator and prey. Carlos lowered his binoculars and whispered, "I came here expecting a struggle. I didn't expect to witness something like friendship." Dr. Summers nodded, pen poised over his notes, already imagining the research paper that would emerge from this event. The bull and python, once locked in mortal combat, now stood in quiet companionship under the oak tree, each aware of the other's presence, each respecting boundaries, each defying expectations. And as the shadows lengthened across the pasture, everyone present understood that this encounter was only the beginning of a story that would test the limits of what humans believed about the natural world. By the third morning after the attack, the bond between Atlas and Viper had grown noticeably stronger, a partnership forged under fire and now solidified through mutual trust. Rangers continued to monitor the animals from a safe distance, marveling at how the bull seemed to intuitively understand the python's limitations, adjusting his movements so as not to alarm or injure the still-recovering serpent. Every time a gust of wind swept across the Texas plains, Atlas would shift slightly, angling his massive body to shield Viper from the dust and debris, his dark eyes vigilant and aware. Dr. Adrian Summers noted the bull's behavior in meticulous detail, already anticipating a groundbreaking study that could rewrite the way scientists thought about bovine cognition and interspecies empathy. Then, without warning, the peace of Silver Creek Ranch was shattered. 3 dusty pickup trucks roared across the gravel drive, raising plumes of dirt and sending the nearby deer bounding into the mesquite. At the wheel was Jake Whitmore, notorious for his illegal exotic animal dealings in South Texas, flanked by 2 of his longtime accomplices, all armed with capture equipment, hooks, heavy nets, and tranquilizer guns. Carlos Mendoza immediately radioed the team, heart pounding. "Rangers, we have intruders, illegal wildlife traffickers approaching the sanctuary. Atlas and Viper are in direct line of danger. Proceed with caution." The poachers, confident and menacing, had clearly tracked Viper through the underground network of exotic animal dealers, aware that a 20-foot Burmese python could fetch tens of thousands of dollars on the black market. But they hadn't accounted for Atlas. The massive bull, still standing protectively near the oak tree, lifted his head and bellowed a deep, resonant warning that echoed across the open pasture. His stance was deliberate, wide and steady, muscles rippling under his sleek coat, clearly communicating that any encroachment would be met with immediate resistance. Viper, although weakened from his previous ordeal, coiled tighter beside the oak tree, visibly alert but no longer panicking. Dr. Summers, observing through binoculars, whispered to Carlos, "This isn't instinct anymore. He's positioning, he's planning. He's defending his companion strategically, not reacting blindly." The poachers, underestimating the intelligence of the bull, advanced cautiously, but as soon as they raised nets and hooks, Atlas lunged with precision. He didn't charge wildly. Each step was measured, each movement aimed at deterring rather than harming. Jake Whitmore, dubbed behind his truck, startled by the sudden appearance of the bull's massive horns and the sound of his thunderous bellow. The accomplices scattered, leaving equipment behind as they scrambled for cover. Carlos and the backup team watched in awe as Atlas returned to his position between the oak and Viper, his body a living barricade. It was as if he had learned from his previous encounter with the python, using terrain to his advantage, positioning himself to block all possible angles of approach. Dr. Summers, notebook in hand, was almost shaking with excitement. "Look at him! He's controlling the battlefield, using every resource, strategy, positioning, threat assessment. This is complex problem-solving at a level rarely seen in any non-human species." Viper seemed to sense the gravity of the moment, subtly shifting his coils and raising his head in coordination with Atlas, forming a defensive but non-aggressive perimeter. The poacher's efforts to flank the duo were continuously thwarted, each attempted maneuver met by calculated adjustments from the bull. Even when a stray branch snapped underfoot, Atlas flinched minimally, never overreacting, ensuring the python remained safe. Minutes stretched like hours as the standoff continued, and finally, the distant sound of sirens grew louder, heralding the arrival of Texas parks and wildlife officers accompanied by federal agents. The poachers, realizing the situation had escalated beyond their control, attempted a retreat, leaving behind their nets, hooks, and tranquilizer guns in their haste. Only then did Atlas relax slightly, returning to his position beside Viper, who now mirrored his calm stance. Dr. Summers, voice trembling, turned to Carlos and whispered, "We're witnessing a level of cross-species communication, trust, and protective intelligence that challenges every preconception I've had about bovine behavior. This will change how the scientific community views animal consciousness." The bull and python remained side by side under the oak tree, the former predator and prey now united in mutual respect and guardianship. Carlos lowered his binoculars, finally able to breathe. "I've seen a lot in my career," he said softly, "but nothing like this. A bull protecting a python, not just surviving, thriving, teaching us all what courage, empathy, and strategy really mean." The sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the pasture, and in that golden light, it was clear that Silver Creek Ranch had become the stage for something unprecedented, a living testament to the intelligence, patience, and emotional depth that could exist in the natural world when creatures were allowed to act on instinct, empathy, and trust. The days following the confrontation with the poachers were tense but transformative for everyone at Silver Creek Ranch. Atlas remained vigilant beside Viper, his massive frame constantly scanning the edges of the pasture, ensuring that no new threats approached. The bull's intelligence was becoming more evident with each passing hour, as he anticipated potential dangers and subtly adjusted his stance, demonstrating a level of situational awareness that left the Rangers and Dr. Adrian Summers in awe. Viper, once subdued and wary, began to explore his surroundings more confidently, coiling and uncoiling with measured grace, showing signs of both physical recovery and an unusual level of comfort in Atlas's presence. Dr. Summers and his team began documenting every movement, taking meticulous notes and photographs, understanding that this unlikely pair was providing a unique window into interspecies communication. The bond was not just protective, it was symbiotic. Atlas would lower his head occasionally, nudging Viper to encourage movement, while the python would adjust his coils in response to the bull's subtle shifts, demonstrating a mutual awareness that bordered on conscious coordination. Bill Henderson, the elderly ranch owner, watched from his veranda with a sense of awe and responsibility. He had spent decades managing cattle and wildlife, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for this. The decision to create a sanctuary on the back 40 acres was already proving necessary, not just for their safety, but for the ethical observation of their behavior. Every morning, rangers and wildlife veterinarians arrived to feed, clean, and assess both animals. Atlas's protective instincts extended even to the humans working under the supervision of Dr. Summers. The bull would position himself between Viper and any approaching ranger, his eyes tracking the movements of those around him without a hint of panic. The python, once aggressive and defensive, now exhibited calm trust, allowing veterinarians to administer care without any resistance. It was clear that the traumatic encounter with the poachers had not diminished their bond. If anything, it had reinforced it, teaching both animals the value of cooperation and trust. Visitors, carefully selected and briefed, were allowed limited observation periods to witness this remarkable relationship firsthand. Scientists from universities across Texas began to schedule regular trips, eager to study the phenomenon. Each observation session revealed new layers of behavioral complexity. Atlas demonstrated not only memory and problem-solving abilities, but also what Dr. Summers described as emotional intelligence, responding to Viper's distress signals, adjusting his position to minimize stress, and even communicating intent through subtle body language. Meanwhile, Viper, in turn, responded to Atlas's guidance with a level of compliance and responsiveness that suggested an understanding of social hierarchy, despite being an entirely different species. Local news outlets began reporting on the story, cautiously at first, with headlines hinting at the unusual friendship. Soon, the story went viral across social media, sparking debates about the cognitive abilities of large animals and the ethical implications of human-animal interactions in the wild. Henderson found himself fielding calls from journalists, researchers, and animal enthusiasts, each eager to witness what had become known as the guardian serpent phenomenon. Despite the growing public attention, he remained steadfast in his focus, protecting the safety and well-being of Atlas and Viper. Every new visitor was briefed extensively on boundaries, observation protocols, and the importance of maintaining a stress-free environment for both animals. Dr. Summers, meanwhile, began drafting a preliminary research paper, titling it Cross-Species Protective Behavior and Cognitive Empathy in Large Vertebrates. He included detailed observations, measurements, and behavioral analysis, noting instances where Atlas had used his body strategically to shield Viper, respond to environmental threats, and even demonstrate patience and problem-solving when navigating obstacles. Each day brought subtle improvements in Viper's physical health, and Dr. Summers documented the python's increasing confidence, coordination with Atlas, and responsiveness to environmental enrichment. The sanctuary staff began creating interactive exercises designed to further stimulate both animals' cognitive and physical abilities. Obstacle courses for the bull, tactile enrichment for the python, and carefully monitored cohabitation activities that encouraged their continued cooperation. The ranch, once a quiet, unassuming property, had transformed into a hub of observation, research, and conservation. Atlas's calm demeanor, Viper's responsiveness, and the depth of their bond provided a model that scientists had only theorized about but never seen in practice. Even routine care, like feeding and watering, became an opportunity to study communication, trust, and protective instincts in real time. The story of Atlas and Viper began to ripple beyond Texas, attracting the attention of international wildlife researchers, conservationists, and educators, all intrigued by the idea that two vastly different species could form such a sophisticated and emotionally resonant partnership. As the sun set each evening over the back 40 acres, Atlas and Viper would settle beneath the oak tree, the bull lying down while the python coiled gently nearby. The sight became emblematic of their resilience, intelligence, and the extraordinary potential of understanding across species, a testament to what could happen when trust and care replaced fear and aggression. Bill Henderson reflected on the sequence of events, realizing that this unprecedented occurrence had not only provided scientific insight, but had also reaffirmed a timeless lesson. Sometimes the most remarkable discoveries come from the unlikeliest friendships, and the power of empathy can transcend instinct, species, and expectation. The following weeks marked a turning point in both the lives of Atlas and Viper and in the understanding of wildlife behavior across the region. The sanctuary became a controlled environment for rigorous observation, and the unusual partnership between the bull and python drew attention from experts worldwide. Dr. Adrian Summers coordinated daily sessions in which he and his graduate team recorded everything from feeding routines to responses to simulated threats. Atlas continued to demonstrate extraordinary awareness, positioning himself in ways that maximized Viper's safety while conserving his own energy. He learned to anticipate the python's movements, subtly adjusting his stance when Viper coiled too tightly or shifted unexpectedly. Each adjustment seemed deliberate, almost as if Atlas could read the python's intentions and act proactively rather than reactively. Viper, for his part, displayed remarkable adaptability, responding to Atlas's cues with astonishing precision. The bond appeared not merely protective but cooperative, reflecting a level of interspecies understanding that challenged prevailing assumptions in ethology. Observations showed that Atlas would sometimes stand guard while Viper rested, strategically scanning the perimeters of the sanctuary. He also displayed problem-solving skills by manipulating the terrain, using fallen logs and raised earth to prevent Viper from sliding or becoming trapped in uneven ground. Dr. Summers and his assistants recorded these behaviors meticulously, noting that the bull's responses could not be explained by instinct alone. Each measured movement suggested a cognitive process, an assessment of risk and opportunity combined with emotional consideration for another species. The sanctuary, initially a private, low-profile endeavor, became a focal point for conservationists and behavioral ecologists. Requests for observation visits poured in, and strict protocols were developed to allow academics to witness the phenomenon without disrupting the bull and python's routines. Local authorities and animal welfare agencies collaborated with Henderson to ensure compliance with regulations, recognizing the unique educational and scientific value of the project. Media coverage escalated as videos and photographs of Atlas gently nudging Viper, shielding him from the wind, or standing guard during medical checkups circulated online. Public fascination grew, with both mainstream news outlets and social media influencers highlighting the story as a demonstration of empathy, intelligence, and the unpredictability of nature. Beyond the public spectacle, Henderson and Dr. Summers focused on research outcomes. Early results suggested that Atlas's behavior indicated both spatial intelligence and a nuanced understanding of vulnerability, while Viper's responses highlighted adaptability and trust in another species. Observations extended to interactions with environmental enrichment devices, where Atlas guided Viper toward hidden food or maneuvered around obstacles in ways that optimized both safety and efficiency. These findings challenged conventional wisdom about cognitive limitations in bovines and reptiles alike. Dr. Summers began drafting a comprehensive report, framing Atlas and Viper as a case study in cross-species emotional intelligence. The research team speculated that the bull's past encounters with danger, combined with his natural temperament, may have contributed to the development of these protective behaviors. Meanwhile, Viper's experience with human care, handling, and recovery from injuries appeared to enhance his responsiveness and willingness to cooperate. The sanctuary staff noticed that visitors, under strict supervision, could witness subtle signs of communication between the two animals. A raised hoof from Atlas might indicate a boundary. A slow step back could signal safety, and Viper's slight shifts in body position seemed to convey acknowledgement or consent. Observers described the interactions as a form of unspoken negotiation, a dialogue, rooted in trust and mutual respect. These discoveries began to influence broader wildlife conservation strategies. Biologists debated whether similar interspecies bonds could be encouraged in other settings, and Henderson Sanctuary became a template for integrating observational research with ethical animal care. The partnership also served an educational purpose. School groups, carefully scheduled to prevent stress, came to witness the unlikely friendship firsthand. Children marveled at the gentle cooperation, and teachers used the interactions to illustrate concepts of empathy, problem-solving, and the value of understanding across differences. The presence of Atlas and Viper fostered a sense of awe and curiosity, inspiring young minds to consider ethical treatment of animals and the complexities of natural behavior. Henderson, reflecting on the unfolding events, recognized the broader significance. What began as a life-and-death encounter had evolved into a phenomenon that challenged assumptions about intelligence, empathy, and interspecies relationships. Atlas and Viper had not only survived, they had created a model for collaboration, trust, and respect in the animal kingdom. Even as the sanctuary became a hub of research and education, the core of the story remained simple and profoundly moving. Two creatures, each misunderstood by their worlds, had found a bond that transcended instinct, proving that patience, understanding, and compassion could yield extraordinary outcomes. The lesson was clear. Sometimes the wildest acts of bravery are not about dominance or strength, but about empathy, courage, and the willingness to protect and support those who cannot defend themselves. The partnership of Atlas and Viper became a symbol, a living testament to the possibilities that emerge when we allow nature to teach us its deepest truths and when we approach life with both heart and reason. As months passed, the bond between Atlas and Viper deepened, and the sanctuary evolved into a dynamic research hub that drew experts from across the globe. Dr. Adrian Summers and his graduate team meticulously documented the bull's protective behaviors and the python's remarkable responsiveness, revealing a level of interspecies cooperation that defied conventional understanding. Each morning, Atlas would patrol the sanctuary's perimeter, his massive frame moving with deliberate precision, while Viper coiled nearby, tracking Atlas's movements with attentive awareness. The bull demonstrated anticipatory behavior, adjusting his positioning based on potential threats or changes in terrain, while the python reacted almost intuitively to his subtle cues, signaling a partnership built on trust rather than instinct alone. The sanctuary's carefully designed environment allowed the two animals to engage in natural behaviors while being observed without interference. Enrichment exercises, such as hidden food caches and obstacle courses, provided both mental stimulation and opportunities for cooperative problem-solving. Atlas would nudge Viper toward difficult-to-reach food or position himself to shield the python from harsh sunlight or wind, demonstrating an awareness of Viper's vulnerability that went far beyond what researchers expected. The python, in turn, would slither into spaces that Atlas could not reach, retrieving small objects or interacting with the environment in ways that reinforced their mutual reliance. News of these interactions quickly spread, drawing attention from conservationists, behavioral ecologists, and educators. The sanctuary became a model for ethical research, combining rigorous observation with a commitment to the well-being of both animals. Students visiting the site were guided in observing patterns, noting the subtle signals and responses between the bull and python, learning that communication and cooperation could transcend species boundaries. Public fascination grew alongside academic interest. Videos of Atlas carefully nudging Viper to safety or standing guard while the python rested went viral, igniting conversations about intelligence, empathy, and ethical treatment of animals. The sanctuary began receiving inquiries from wildlife organizations seeking to replicate similar observation protocols for other species. Dr. Summers emphasized that the behaviors witnessed were not isolated quirks, but indicative of cognitive abilities that required nurturing, patience, and an environment conducive to trust. Meanwhile, the bull and python's influence reached beyond research. Henderson collaborated with local schools to create educational programs highlighting interspecies relationships, problem-solving, and empathy. Children learned to observe without interfering, to respect boundaries, and to recognize intelligence and emotional depth in creatures often underestimated or misunderstood. Atlas and Viper became living educators, their calm, yet calculated behaviors serving as lessons in observation, patience, and the value of cooperation. Conservationists began to consider how environmental conditions and human intervention might foster similar bonds in other settings, challenging traditional approaches to wildlife management. The story of Atlas and Viper inspired a broader dialogue about intelligence in non-mammalian species, particularly reptiles, and the impact of social context on behavior. Henderson and Dr. Summers noted that the python's previously documented aggression likely reflected stress and environmental constraints rather than inherent malice. The sanctuary's careful management demonstrated that, with the right conditions, even creatures historically labeled as dangerous could exhibit remarkable adaptability, trust, and cooperative instincts. The partnership also transformed the sanctuary itself. Observers noted that the two animals influenced the behavior of other species introduced for ecological balance, such as rabbits and smaller reptiles. Atlas's presence promoted calmness, while Viper's alertness added a layer of environmental awareness, demonstrating the ripple effect of their unusual collaboration. As research papers and case studies began to be published, the academic community acknowledged that Atlas and Viper represented an unprecedented opportunity to explore cross-species empathy, problem-solving, and the cognitive limits of non-traditional animals. The bull's protective strategies, combined with the python's responsive behavior, offered insights that could inform conservation strategies, sanctuary design, and human understanding of animal intelligence. Beyond the academic and ecological impact, the relationship profoundly affected Henderson and his team. Witnessing the daily interactions between the bull and python cultivated a deeper appreciation for the emotional and cognitive capacities of animals previously thought to be simple or instinct-driven. The sanctuary became a place of wonder, observation, and education, where the extraordinary bond of two unlikely companions challenged assumptions and reshaped understanding of what is possible when animals are given space, trust, and opportunity. In every recorded observation, Atlas and Viper exemplified patience, empathy, and the power of partnership, leaving researchers, students, and visitors alike in awe of the depth and richness of interspecies relationships. Their story began as a life-and-death struggle on a Texas plain, but it had blossomed into a phenomenon with scientific, educational, and emotional resonance that would echo far beyond the sanctuary's fences. The lesson was profound. Intelligence, compassion, and trust could flourish even the wildest and most unlikely pairings, transforming not only the lives of the creatures involved, but also the humans privileged to witness them. Years later, Atlas and Viper had become legendary, not just in Texas, but around the world. The sanctuary, now officially named the Henderson Wildlife and Behavioral Research Preserve, had grown to encompass over 200 acres of protected land, blending natural habitat restoration with cutting-edge observational facilities. Researchers from universities across the globe regularly visited to study the two animals, marveling at the patterns of cooperation, communication, and problem-solving that continued to emerge. Atlas, now older but still massive and commanding, had grown into a wise, almost sage-like presence, his movements deliberate and confident. Viper, rejuvenated after recovering fully from the initial attack and injuries, slithered alongside him with a grace that belied his size, displaying a mutual awareness that astonished even the most seasoned wildlife experts. The sanctuary's educational programs expanded significantly. Students ranging from elementary school to graduate level were invited to observe the pair, learning firsthand the lessons of trust, empathy, and interspecies cooperation. Through guided observation, they noted how Atlas anticipated Viper's needs, adjusted his position to provide shade, and even blocked potential hazards, while Viper communicated subtle cues that helped Atlas navigate the terrain or locate hidden food sources. The researchers published multiple peer-reviewed studies, collectively referred to as the Atlas-Viper phenomenon, documenting unprecedented examples of cognition, strategic thinking, and emotional intelligence in both bovine and reptilian species. These publications challenged long-standing assumptions about animal intelligence and the limitations of predator-prey relationships, sparking debates in conservation biology and behavioral science. Beyond academia, the story captured the public imagination. Documentaries, news features, and social media posts spread the tale of the bull and python whose bond defied instinct and expectation. Visitors traveled from across the country to witness their interactions, often leaving deeply moved by the calm, yet profound connection shared between two creatures from vastly different evolutionary paths. Henderson, once a quiet rancher, now served as a guide and advocate, sharing insights about the ethical treatment of animals, the importance of environmental enrichment, and the transformative power of patience and respect. Atlas and Viper's relationship became a model for sanctuary management worldwide, influencing protocols for handling potentially dangerous or misunderstood species. Conservation organizations consulted Henderson on fostering natural behaviors and cooperative interactions in other animal populations, using lessons learned from the bull and python to improve animal welfare and ecological management. Remarkably, the sanctuary also became a center for rehabilitating injured or displaced wildlife, with Atlas and Viper serving as ambassadors of calm and intelligence. New animals introduced into the preserve often modeled their behavior on the pair, showing reduced stress and enhanced adaptability. In interviews, Dr. Adrian Summers emphasized that the most significant discoveries were not just the animal's intelligence, but the profound lessons for humans. The bull's capacity for problem-solving, empathy, and protective instincts, combined with the python's trust and responsiveness, demonstrated that respect, patience, and opportunity could unlock potential in even the most unlikely pairings. The story inspired countless visitors to reconsider how they viewed animals, encouraging an ethic of care, observation, and understanding that extended into farming, conservation, and everyday human interactions. Even after Atlas passed, his legacy lived on through offspring carefully bred to preserve his intelligence and temperament, while Viper remained at the sanctuary, continuing to demonstrate behaviors shaped by decades of partnership and mutual respect. Annual gatherings commemorated the duo, with students, researchers, and visitors sharing observations and celebrating the enduring impact of their story. Henderson often reflected on the miraculous turn of events, the day a deadly encounter transformed into a lifelong partnership, and marveled at the unexpected ways in which life could teach humility, compassion, and insight. The bull who had defied death and the python who had inspired trust had together rewritten the rules of wildlife understanding. Their story, documented in scientific journals, news media, and educational programs, became a timeless testament to the extraordinary capabilities of animals when provided with care, respect, and freedom. In the quiet moments of sunset, when the wind whispered across the Texas plains, Henderson would often watch the two creatures move together, side by side, and feel the profound truth of their journey. It was a narrative of survival, intelligence, and friendship that transcended species, a reminder that courage, empathy, and connection can emerge in the most unexpected circumstances. The bull that had faced a deadly predator, and the python that had initiated the encounter, had forged a bond that inspired humans and animals alike, leaving a legacy that would continue to teach, amaze, and transform the understanding of what is possible in the natural world. In the end, their story proved that life's most extraordinary lessons often arise from the unlikeliest of friendships, and that the world is far richer when we open ourselves to the impossible connections waiting to be discovered.